everyone, and welcome once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And this is Mistare Fusion.
Hi, Fusion!
Hi, how's it going?
I have brought in Mistare Fusion for the first commentary we've ever done together to talk about Serenity, and this is a movie that Fusion's been wanting to watch with me for a long time now, and we are finally getting around to doing it. I am really excited about this, because this is a great movie, and there's all kinds of fun stuff to talk about. In fact, I think Serenity is going to be a movie that is going to be a lot easier to do a commentary on than it would to do a review, because I think if I reviewed this movie, it would be 2 hours long.
Well,
No, it wouldn't actually be that long, but there's going to be...
solve that problem.
But but I mean, like it's dense. I think we will find as we're going along that I've had this happen with a lot of commentaries where I'm going through, and even at 2 hours, I will feel like I had more to say, and I think this is likely to be one of those lickety split goes by really fast kind of commentaries. Lance, why did you choose this specific film?
Browncoats Unite. I don't know. I don't know. It's just I think it's partly because I've just been doing so much Star Trek lately that it's nice to get back to more grim and gritty kind of on the frontier kind of thing rather than the pristine, moral posturing of of Star Trek. It's always this very intimate kind of setting and location in a sort of familial type of you're banded together family. It's just a very sort of familial kind of warm, fuzzy, but at the same time kind of just rough around the edges. There's just something about it that's really, really sort of organic, if that makes any sense.
When you make a really good point, when this first came out, it was really filling a void, and I think that and I think that kind of gritty sci-fi void, and I think later on Battlestar Galactica filled it.
Wait, which is actually funnily enough, I've never actually seen Battlestar Galactica, but if I open my DVD case, there actually is. I see it every time I open it as a Battlestar Galactica flyer because that was going on when this movie came out on DVD. So I open this up and
right.
I always see Battlestar Galactica the first time every time I open this movie.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into it. Everybody who is watching this with us, if you have never done one of these with us before, what we do is we talk about the film while we're watching it, and you can listen to this as a podcast or as a commentary track, and we will try to provide plenty of context for what we're talking about as we go along, in case you happen to be listening to this on a jog or in your car. If you want to watch it with us, get out your DVD, your Blu-ray, watch it on Netflix, however you want to watch it, and get it past all the menus and everything to timestamp 0 and get ready to press play as soon as I say now. Lance, are you prepared?
I am prepared.
All right, here we go. Without further ado, everybody, please press play right now.
And here's that wonderful Universal Globe opening. And I love the opening to this movie, and it's very economical with the globe going to the actual Earth that was, and the school and the flashback and the hologram, and because it's difficult to continuing a television series into a feature film that you're trying to get a broad audience to, and aside from the fact that I don't necessarily like the way Simon's character was rewritten in this flashback to be more of a man of action danger boy. This is actually a really fun way to open a film, I think.
Something that I thought was really neat about the opening with the Universal logo too is it's neat that they go to the Earth, but it's also cool that they go right past the V, because they're always calling the universe the verse. I think it's kind of neat that verse is in the word universal.
I never thought about that, but do you think that was intentional?
I'm not sure if it was or not, but I thought of it.
I can see Joss Whedon thinking of something like that, but
oh, I could too, or I could see him not at all. But it's neat. It's neat if it was there. We should definitely, of course, talk about here pretty soon the business of this is, as far as I know, the first time that a short-lived TV show made a comeback in a feature film. I can't think of another time that ever happened.
Well, I don't know. Would Star Trek count?
Star Trek only sort of counts because it wasn't this short-lived. You know what I
I mean,
mean?
I mean, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. I mean, it definitely wasn't this
it was
short-lived, but
canceled, but not this prematurely. Like
yeah,
they tried
but
to
if
cancel that
you think
show
about it,
every season, and they kept coming back. Like this was a
yeah,
case where it got canceled 13 episodes. It didn't even get a full season.
that's true, but I still can't help but think about the similarities because I mean, they both did have massive letter writing campaigns. I mean, granted, Star Trek's was a little more successful, obviously, than Firefly's, but it is, I don't know, I guess it's more of a testament to the types of fandoms that these types of shows attract. But it is, and obviously, Star Trek was more successful as a feature film franchise as well than this I guess ended up being. As much as I love it, it didn't have the kind of box office revenue that they would have liked to have had, that I would have liked it to have had. um, but I don't know. It's still just almost it always seemed kind of reminiscent of Star Trek's history to me in a somewhat loose sense.
What's interesting about that too is that it's very reminiscent of the history that we thought there was. Here in the last couple of years, we recently have discovered through a lot of letters and things that Star Trek actually was not resurrected by a letter writing campaign. It turned out that it was actually getting great ratings all the time, and the network was hiding that because they didn't like
Oh, really?
Roddenberry. They were trying to kill it.
I thought it was because they hadn't quite figured out the concept of demographics yet, and they just weren't realizing how widely reaching that it was.
Not according to a new book that just came out last year, and
Which
that has that.
what book is that?
See, I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it's oh, it's called. I think it's called. These are the voyage. I forget what it's called. I need to look that up. It's a
I need to
book
catch up.
that I. What's that now?
I said, yeah, I need to catch up on my Star Trek reading.
Yeah, I will. Fusion. I'll send you that when I find it again because I just don't remember the name right off the top of my head right now. They the people that made that sent me a review copy and I haven't reviewed it yet, but I've read a lot of it.
So is this scene something that ever like coming off the television series is something that seemed ever kind of inconsistent to you? Like watching this scene. I mean, it's really cool getting to see Simon do action stuff and being able to be so sneaky and stuff like that. But I always think back to the episode Janestown, where they get to the mining town and Mal puts Simon in charge because he looks like the kind of person who'd be a mud buyer, and he just stutters and stammers his way through the entire conversation. Wash even has that line. And what happened to the diabolical master of disguise? But then you have this earlier Simon here, chronologically earlier, where he's able to like just walk into this this medical facility and just totally fake out this doctor that he's supposed to be there. That ever seem inconsistent to you, or is that just me? Because I'm
No,
a
I'm with you. I
huge
completely agree with you. I think that he seems like a total badass operative here,
yeah.
and that's not yeah, no, that wasn't quite in his character before. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that he could infiltrate a place like this and potentially get away with it, but I think that he would be a little bit more socially awkward and it wouldn't go off without a hitch like that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like I'm not saying this in the sense that I don't think Simon can be strong and effective even at this point in his life, even before he gets
Yeah.
on Serenity. Because I mean, I love the episode Ariel where we actually get to see Simon in his element, and he is a strong, forceful, authoritative character when he's in a place where he knows what he's doing. But yeah, again, I just don't see this as being entirely compatible with that either.
No, I'm with you, and I don't know if you could make it an adrenaline argument or anything like that. Something I really dug the first time I saw this that I thought was kind of mind blowing, and of course Whedon is really good at playing with your expectations. Is that the first two scenes are not traditional flashbacks, and
Yeah.
are and are kind of simulations. And after the first one, you really don't expect the next one to be one, and that's
Yeah.
really cool and a great
Yeah.
and also I like that there aren't any straight up flashbacks in the whole movie.
That's true. There aren't, are there? It's interesting because this almost it seems like a different aesthetic from the TV show in a lot
Oh,
of ways. Like a
it
lot like
absolutely is. Yeah.
very, very, very much. Just in terms, I mean, even just in terms, I mean, aside from just the fact that the locations, you get to see more technologically advanced places of the verse than you would in in the TV show, but also just kind of like the cinematography and the color schemes of it just feel a lot, yeah, almost. I mean, it's still compatible definitely, but it always felt kind of different to me, especially once we get into the ship. But I'll mention that when we get there. There's certain things that just didn't yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but in terms of this, I don't know, again, I agree that I love the non-traditional flashback structure here and the introduction to the operative, and I can even forgive the inconsistency in Simon's characters because it's so effective as a standalone film thing to get people up to
Yeah,
speed. I can live
and
with
and
it.
and one of the things I always find myself kind of jarred by with this movie after I watch it, after I go back and watch the TV show again first, and then come back and watch this, is those kind of visual inconsistencies. Because the thing is, I saw it out of order. I saw the movie first, and then went back and
Oh,
watched the
really?
TV show. Yeah, and so this was my introduction to this universe, and
Oh,
so I always forget that they look different.
like okay, blah, blah. With all that in mind, I have to ask, did the concept of it being a space western, did that even take hold with you just with this movie?
You know, it kind of, sort of. I mean, I got that that was sort of the premise, but I found myself struggling to just keep up with everything that was going on. And I mean, like, I remember enjoying it, but also just trying to keep all the plot points in my head because the movie has to do, a lot of work to bring a new audience up to speed, and I don't think it's fully successful at that, but I don't think it fully has to be either. I think it is it's a direct sequel. I mean, Whedon said that it is 2 or 3 seasons worth of material.
Yeah.
He got at the end of this to where he wanted to be at the end. I think a season 3, he said.
Wow.
And so, like, I think the movie does a pretty good job of being something that you can kind of come in and watch. But once you've seen the TV show, you're like, well, I really liked that, but now that I've seen the TV show, it all makes a lot more sense,
Yeah.
and it's just a
Well,
more fleshed out universe. And, like, you wouldn't really understand, like, the significance of Shepherd Book as well, and things like
oh
that.
yeah,
um
I have a lot to say about that,
the
definitely.
big thing, but to answer your question, the big thing that I did not pick up on the first time I saw this was the humor. I thought it was a joyless film the first time I saw it, and
I
I
can see
found that I needed to watch the TV show to understand the subtle comedy, because there is no straight laugh out loud moments in this film. I think this is a very
well,
subtle comedy kind of movie for the most
I
part.
don't know. I always laugh out loud at the you want to run this ship? Yes. Well, you can't.
Well, yeah,
I always
but
crack
see,
up at that one.
yeah, but let me ask you that. But if it is laugh out loud funny, it's because that's so in his character, and you know him
Yeah.
already. Like, if you
Okay. Yeah.
first,
Good point.
if when I first saw this, I didn't laugh out loud at that moment because I didn't know that guy very well. So
Okay.
it was
Okay.
sort of funny, but
I understand then. And also right here with Wash's oh God, we're all gonna die. But again, I can see that as being more of a character thing, because you expect, if you know the character, you expect him to say something like that.
it's also great
But I
because
actually,
it's also great that that's his first line, because, or one of his first lines, because that's foreshadowing of his own death.
uh, sorry, I'm a huge Wash fanboy. In fact, actually when I was first getting into the series, I went out and I bought a Hawaiian shirt just so I could be like Wash, because he was always the one I identified with the most. And
Well, I'm
actually,
sorry
I
he's
hate
one of your favorite characters, but I'm still going to point out when the movie does really cool things in its structure.
no,
And that's one of the cool
no,
things that it did.
it is. No, it is. But I did tell people I hated this movie the first time I saw it, just because of that. I was so in fanboy anger mode for a few days because I was so shocked and hurt.
Yeah, that
uh,
just means that you weren't used to Joss Whedon's body of work enough, because you had to
oh
go
no.
into this movie knowing somebody you liked was going to die. Although I think that Shepherd Book's death is a red herring. I think
Yeah,
that that is partly there so that you won't see Wash's death coming.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
So,
Actually, that it did exactly that for me, because I was trying so I got in the series for Christmas. I'd only seen the pilot while I was in college, and because a friend showed it to me, and I liked it so much I asked for the entire series and the movie for Christmas. And I'd seen the entire series. I was about to go into the movie. I was trying to avoid spoilers, but I thought I accidentally did glance on Wash's Wikipedia page and it mentioned that he died. But I looked at it just shortly enough that I could convince myself that maybe I misread that. And then one Shepherd book died. That convinced me that I'd been wrong about that. And so it was really a surprise when it did happen.
Yeah, now that you've brought that up, all I can look at right now is um sorry, I got distracted. All I can do right now is look at him and be like, I don't know if he's in character anymore. Like he just seems so confident now.
Well, I'm fine with that here at this point. Now that he's been on the ship, oh, here's that cool whip pan that disguises the two layers of the set. Well, I'm okay with that more at this point in the story. I wasn't, since
No, I
that was a
understand. Yeah.
flashback, yeah, before that, but I could be okay with him having gotten more confident around Mal than the guy who was
Yeah,
getting punched out several
and,
times in
and,
the
and I
pilot.
think and I think he did, but even here Simon seems a little bit more confident than he was like at the end of the
Yeah,
series by
yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah,
So
but
so I want to talk a little
but
bit more
also
about.
Mal's different as well. I mean, I can see that as being just a transition and a logical transition from this. He's more serious in the movie than he was
And
there
I
in
don't
the
know that we
series.
really know exactly how much time passed between the last episode and this one because the last
I mean,
episode wasn't a proper finale.
I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be 2 months, I think, or 6 months. I can't remember anymore.
I think
um,
within the film they're pretty ambiguous about it. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at right now. This is, if it's not a oneer from the start of this to right now, they've sure cut it together to where you can't tell where the
yeah.
break is.
There's
And
yeah yeah yeah, there's only one break, and that's when they do that whip pan from Mal to Simon because they're going down because it's two different sets, the upper layer and the bottom level, and they had to do one cut when they were going down the stairs, but that was it. But it looks like it's all one shot. I do love
uh,
that.
Whedon is in love with oneers. This is one of his favorite things to do. There was an episode of Angel that opened. I think it's the opener of season 5 that has a oneer almost this long. But this one is a lot more complicated
Yeah, and I mean
because
it
it's
serves a
through
great
this
function too.
enormous set. Well, and it introduces you to everybody that's currently on the ship.
Yep. Aesthetically, though, I have to say this: I really don't like the cargo bay in this movie. For two reasons. I mean, one is my annoying nerd continuity issues is of the fact that it's of like I thought they did a great job of reproducing all the TV sets almost perfectly, but the cargo bay they made some substantial modifications to that I don't really understand why. I mean, they're mostly just aesthetic changes, nothing really functional. Like there's this big round shape on the door leading to the infirmary and the passenger dorms, but also I don't like the way it's lit in this movie. And I figured out why when I was watching a special feature on the TV show is that when they were talking about when they were building the sets for the show, they mentioned that they specifically created each part of the ship with its own color scheme in mind to represent a particular mood. And they were very specific about the cargo bay being very warm because it's the area of the ship where everybody comes together as a family and has all of their activities happen in there. But in the movie, it always seems to be shot very blue, like everything seems really cold. Like it seems just really blue and metallic and shiny. I don't get any warmth from it in this movie, except maybe in a couple of shots, and that just it feels like a totally different place. And I don't. That's always bugged me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't bother me that much, but no, I'm just I'm always focused on other things. Like yeah, I kind of peripherally notice when I watch the show and then watch the movie that there are differences, and I always just kind of chalk that up to it's a movie now and they had to rebuild
Oh
sets.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
no, I
Again,
get what you're saying. The wardrobe's a little bit different too. I wanted to mention something real quick before we get too far away from it. I really like uh, the first exchange, or the first little tiny exchange that Mal and River have right at the beginning, because this is ultimately very much their movie, though you don't know that until you get to the end, really. And he he asks her if she knows what her purpose is, and she asks him if and she asks him the same thing. And that's ultimately what the entire movie is these two characters trying to figure out their purpose in the universe, but more importantly, they're rediscovering their humanity. And that's a really cool way to reintroduce those characters, uh, because up until this point, in the series, you don't really put Mal and River in the same sentence together very much. And it's really cool how this becomes their story. And I think ultimately the show was supposed to have gone there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know, yeah, again, it feels like it was cut off at the exact point where that would have started happening anyway, because the last
Yeah,
episode,
you're right with the
Objects in
last episode.
Space, is the one where it sort of, well, at first it establishes for certain almost that she does have, the reader, the psychic type thing, and also it's the one where she, for the first time, really becomes connected with the rest of the crew, rather than just being that sort of person who says strange things who's off in the background kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
because we couldn't even be sure up to that point if she wasn't just a complete crazy person. We didn't know,
yeah.
her moments of lucidity. You could never be sure were actual moments of lucidity, and of course, all that is completely fleshed out in this.
I'd say in term this is like the only segment of the movie that really captures. Of course, I mean it is fairly standard structure for a movie like this to have a sort of opening scene that sort of sets all of the normalcy in motion. The standard, this is what we do. We're thieves. This is what a normal typical heist would look like, kind of thing. But also I in terms of, since the movie takes such a departure in terms of story from the series, this is like really the only remnant of the again the space western type of thing, where it is, the underdeveloped, fringe planets, that are, out on the outskirt kind of thing, because it gets so focused, as it should, on the whole river operative and, Mal story, that it's good to have something to establish that this is what this verse is, and this is what we'd normally be seeing.
Well, that's a good point. This movie finally gets it to a very, very, very science fiction place,
Yeah,
and it's not like they hadn't done some of that before. But I mean, like, not knowing who the Reavers were and stuff like that before this, you didn't really know exactly what, how far they could go with that. And in this we've got Mr. Universe, and we've got the Reavers, and the very, science fiction kind of lore of how they were created, and and all of that, and a lot more technology stuff than we had ever had in the
yeah,
show.
it's much less westerny, much less sort of, 6 shooter standoff thieving kind of stuff than you normally see in the series, because it has other goals to accomplish.
Yeah, but I would argue that it still manages to keep that tone with our
Yeah,
protagonists.
yes, yeah. It keeps the tone. It loses the set pieces while keeping the tone. If that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, which is a tough juggling act, but I think that's ultimately why I like the movie so much,
Mhm.
because that juxtaposition is really cool. It still feels like a very original and unique kind of universe, but then it goes to all the places that I get giddy about in science fiction
Yeah.
when
I
it's
mean,
dealing
I
with,
actually,
the politics and the state versus people, and the state trying to control people, and the cautionary tale of using technology in bad ways and all that kind of stuff.
do you think, to a certain extent, how different do you think this is from what would have ended up on screen, had the series been able to be allowed to continue, and for this to actually play out over a couple of seasons of television, as opposed to, less than 2 hours of film? Do you think that a lot of those ideas were presented in a, Like, were there any major deviations you think from the way the Alliance was portrayed and how the the sort of antagonistic nature sort of do you think it had to be built up to a certain extent to sort of get this conflict going as quickly as possible, as opposed to
Yeah,
sort of making it a bit more
the
ambiguous?
yeah. For instance, the operative strikes me as a season big bad. Um, like I don't know if Whedon would have done that exactly with the same kind of character. I don't remember in his commentary if he goes into exactly what his plan was versus this, or if he had even entirely gotten that far. It's likely that, and I think he even talked about this, that he had a kind of basic structure like you often do. But the thing is, if you were to have done this in a grander scale over several episodes, and you're actually letting your characters drive your story like Whedon is prone to do, it could have ran off in totally different directions just because this is a very condensed version of what he would have done over a couple of seasons.
Yeah.
So I guess the easy answer to that is who knows. The I don't know if the same characters would have ultimately gotten killed, all of that kind of stuff. The Reavers and how they were created, and all of the and and all of the themes that inevitably come out of that would have probably been ideas that would have been built over lots and lots of episodes.
But you are convinced that that those ideas were or would have still been intact in some form, like
I'm almost
as in
positive. Yeah.
hmm. I agree. I just want to get your thoughts on that. Yeah, as if it was, I don't know. I always a sort of suspicion of you know, did were these things linked together just because it was narratively convenient, or is that the way he always envisioned or thought about it in the past?
Yeah, the way he
And
always
also,
talked about it, it sure sounded to me like he had, especially with the Reavers, like this was the plan from the beginning.
mhm. I don't know. Like, do you think a character
That
like
all
the
looks
operative,
really good.
like as yeah, that looks. I love that.
I
Do
was
you
always
think?
really impressed with what they managed to do on such a small budget. This doesn't look like a TV show, and it really could
No,
have.
no, it doesn't.
But I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
Do you think that I don't actually I sort of thought about something. Do you think that do you think a character like the operative would have even existed had this not or do you think he's more like a Borg Queen type of character where it's like we need a focal point for the quote unquote villainy, and since we have to condense this to 2 hours, or do you think he's a type of character that because like for example the TV series had the Hands of Blue characters instead.
Yeah, I'm with you. He might have been just made up for the movie, and yeah, he's just the face of the Alliance in this. But he's so incredibly interesting. I just don't care, even if that is the
Oh yeah,
case.
no,
Like I said,
I
I could have totally seen him as a big bad. I could have totally seen him
yeah,
like hunting for them over a lot longer period of time. I do think
yeah.
Mr. Universe was a contrivance for this movie.
You think so?
He sure comes off that way. That strikes me as a character that we would have heard about if he was supposed to have existed. Because they
Mhm.
go to him real quick at the beginning of this, and then he's ultimately a really major plot point later on, kind of conveniently. So, like, I'm not saying it's really a problem, but it's a little suspicious that we had never heard of that guy in 13 episodes.
Yeah.
If you
No, I
think
mean,
if you think about like how useful he is to them.
I certainly find it possible. I don't find it extremely plausible though. So I agree with you on that. I can look over it, or
Yeah,
I
me
can
too.
overlook it. I suppose to say.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I like the way Mao's character works in this movie. As again, it's almost kind of a flip floppy thing because I remember like in the pilot, they Joss Whedon had written him as more of a brooding, angsty type of character, only to be asked by the network to lighten him up and make him more comical. Which granted a lot of his most popular moments come from his sense of humor and his sillier moments. But of course the movie kind of
And
takes it
that's why you
back to
get
that dark.
Fillion for a role like this.
Yes, but yeah, and of course the movie kind of takes him back to that darker place. That he was more almost more like he was in the pilot than he was in the rest of the series. which works either way works for me. I don't see it as any type of really inconsistency. But I just find it interesting the way to make him more dynamic and have that more of a standard character arc.
I think it's really interesting that the scene right before this, you had Zoe tell someone that the definition of a hero is someone who gets other people killed, and right after that, Mal gets somebody killed.
Yeah, and then of course, I mean, actually,
And
she
well, and I'm not saying,
brought
and
up
I'm
to
not
the
saying
whole
that.
movie. The whole movie is that.
Yeah, exactly. And it, it's about how things are not that black and white. And you've got Mal through this whole movie trying to figure out who he even thinks he is anymore. Later on, we're gonna have the thing with Book where he'll tell Mal he doesn't care what he believes. He just wants him to believe in something. And
Yeah.
Mal's character arc is a lot about developing some kind of a belief system because he's lost himself. And I think I like him more in this movie than I ever did in the TV show. And I found him very likable in a lot of places there too. But like here, maybe likable is not the right word. I appreciate him
More compelling.
because, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the word. He's very compelling because he is finding himself uh, acting too much like the Alliance, and he doesn't want to admit it. And he's too much like them in the sense that they don't seem to have any regard for life so much as they just want to be able to control people. And he's fighting against that because all he wants is the freedom to do what he wants to do, and that's why he fights against the Alliance. And yet, in order to maintain that freedom, he has to curb the freedom of others, and he starts finding he's caring less and less about what he's doing to other people and more about just his own freedom. And he's realizing that he's uncomfortably close to what he's been fighting against this entire time. And then you have, and by the way, I love that
Oh yeah,
transition
that's just
where you get
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say
you
that.
get well, I had to, you get because that's what I was just about to talk about,
Yeah.
where you have Mal's face right next to River's face, because River seems to have also lost her humanity in a very different way, but the Alliance is to both of them responsible. And so they have this really interesting relationship where they're more alike than you ever would have thought they were. And
Well, I
so
mean, in terms of,
ultimately, Mal will have to find his humanity through helping her regain or re-find hers.
in terms of that though, I always think back to that line, that conversation with Jane later on, where it's the Alliance starts the war and you volunteer,
Yeah.
where it always comes back to that he uh this same kind of God, I'm losing myself here already. It is kind of late. But so I don't know. I never really thought about it in terms of him struggling with becoming more like the Alliance. In fact, I actually have found kind of uh, Joss Whedon in his commentary seemed kind of proud that that Mal would be the one to be so quick to shoot first. Because he does shoot like what, three or four uh unarmed men in this movie. But yeah, there is the I do love that dichotomy of Mal where it's I shot that man because in the beginning of the film because I needed to have room for this money to keep us flying, but at the same time, as soon as the Alliance gets involved, then he is the first one to jump up and say, and take things into his own hands just because he feels compelled to fight against them. So it's
Well, like I
both
said, it's not
being
black and
both
white.
both being selfish. Yeah, exactly.
He certainly has a good argument there. But then so does Zoe when she says, back in the war, we would have never done that.
Yeah.
We would have never left a man behind like that. And so what has all of this done to you? And then with the backstory about the Reavers and stuff, we find out that the Alliance doesn't have regard for people. They just see people as a means to an end. And so I don't think Mal is seeing himself as he is exactly like the Alliance, but just in this broad sense of he's always using people to his own end. What is it that makes him different from the people that he hates?
Okay, well, sorry. In terms of laugh out loud lines, that was another one right there. Kaylee's batteries line. and Mal's reaction to it.
Yeah, Mal's reaction to it especially. I always wondered if that was an ad
Sorry.
lib.
Sorry,
Oh
I
no, no, no,
didn't mean to
you're
cut you
you're
off there
fine.
that was a much more important point that you were making, but I could not bring attention to that.
When I first saw this movie and the twins come out and one of them says domestic troubles and the next one says it again, I kind of expected a third one. Domestic troubles.
Oh, just kept on going. I had four or five of
That's a
them,
lot of
and
fun. Yeah, yeah, they just get they're Agent Smith from Matrix Reloaded. They just
oh,
but yeah,
okay.
there is a fun quirkiness to this movie, and it's easy to overlook it because the themes are heavy, and
Like the
it's
Fruity
got
Bar
these.
commercial we're about to see.
Yeah, yeah, it's hilarious. But yeah, there's all these big heavy ideas, and this is one of those movies where it's almost like buying two action figures and like wanting to take one out of the box to play with, and then keeping the other one in the package and keeping it pristine. I almost want to watch this twice in a row. Where one time I watch it with my like analytical literary brain, and then the other one I just enjoy it
Yeah.
because I almost have to watch this on two different levels, and that's what I love so much about movies like this is that it can be enjoyed on multiple levels. It's very layered. Summer Glau performance in this is just magnificent. And I remember watching the TV show thinking, boy, if I hadn't seen the movie, I would keep wondering if she was much of an actress because she doesn't get much to do. Like, all she has to do is sit around and kind of look kind of crazy. And then you watch this movie and and that's not to say that she gets nothing, but like, then you watch this movie and you're like, oh, that's why they cast her in this role. Okay. Like, it would have been much better, of course. I mean, I love this movie. Ultimately, I wish the series had continued, but would you agree with me if I were to say that thank God this got made? Because first of all, I'm glad we got the Reaver story because it's so interesting.
Oh
But
yeah.
second of all, we finally get to see her do stuff.
hmm Well, actually, it's funny you should mention that because again, it's I like that you have the introductory perspective that you do. I've introduced several people to this series and always started with the series itself. I remember when I was in college, I showed one of my roommates this series, and his favorite character was Jane by far, and he absolutely despised River in every single episode of the show. And in the movie he finally started to accept her a little bit. I think he still had quite a bit of bitterness towards her from the series, but I think he finally started to change his opinions towards her a little bit. So I can definitely it's interesting that your perspective is the exact opposite in terms of the way you're introduced, is and you saw exactly what it is she's capable of, both as an actress and as a character in this film, and then got to go back and see her as a sort of almost kind of the ditz as her role in the show, that the one who says the weird things and not really sure where she fits
Well,
in kind of
not even
thing.
a
But
ditz so
you
much
already
as
knew
just
going into that.
yeah, not even a ditz so much as just not really being a fully realized character.
Yeah.
The beginning of this movie, they're questioning is she? Mal has that line where he's later on after this. I still haven't decided if she's a person or not. Neither had I. And so then you like having seen this once and then going back and watching the series and knowing where it went, I think I liked her better. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But like, I don't know, having watched this movie, I couldn't see her as anything but a reflection of Mal because that's what this movie's all about.
Is that kind of odd though? Because again, you don't really see many, and I'm pretty sure you mentioned this earlier. You don't really see many shades of them together. Those two characters interacting or being thematically tied in the series. So I mean, is
Yeah,
that
you're
something?
right. You're right. It was weird, and I had to see the whole series, and then watch the movie again to fully appreciate the film.
Is that something that you felt was lacking though when you went back to series? Is that something that you missed from the film, or something that you
Yeah,
felt?
yeah, absolutely, I did until I got to that last episode, and they finally have her kind of save the whole ship and have Mal appreciate her more, and then I was like, okay, well, there's an organic progression to all this. Lance, what is your favorite episode of the TV show?
Um, I've always said it's out of gas.
That is mine as well. Yes, indeed. I think out of gas, and you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, before we started recording, where I mentioned something and you said, "Let's save that for the video." Okay, so I'm going to mention this now. At
Oh,
the
good, because I've
when
forgotten about that already.
I first saw the series, I wasn't sure about the pilot. Partly because I guess I was used to the pacing of the film, but like, I didn't think it was the best introduction to all the characters. I felt like it wasn't really enough of a cohesive story as much as just let's introduce all these characters, and I didn't feel like it was. I felt like it had pilotitis just a little bit, but I thought. In a lot of ways, I found myself wishing Out of Gas was the first episode because I thought that was a great introduction to everybody through those flashbacks.
I actually, I was going to ask you if you thought the train job was a better pilot, since it ended up being the first, the second first episode, which ended up
Yeah,
being
I
actually aired
think
first
I
episode.
think it was too. Yeah, I mean, I think that the problem with the pilot is I for whatever reason I remember, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. I found myself not grasping enough of what the universe was supposed to be, and I had to see the train job and a couple other episodes before I fully understood what the backstory was.
See, I never thought about that before because I mean, again, it's coming from the perspective of all the like the special features and commentaries on the series, where it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
we made this. It's like, oh, we made this pilot episode of the network. They didn't want us to do that, so they made us make this other one. And I guess that kind of influenced me to think, oh, well, of course it's better the way this is. Another friend, my former roommate, I showed this to her, and once we got to the train job, I showed her the pilot, showed her the train job after that, and then I mentioned the fact that that was actually the first episode to air, and the network and the evil network had made them do this, and she goes, "What? Well, the train job actually works a lot. But I think that was a much better first episode. It's much more contained, and again, like, you mentioned pilotitis." And she didn't use that exact word, but it seemed like the kind of similar thing, as in it was you're introduced to the characters in the train job, but in a more integrated way rather than going out of its way to introduce those characters.
Yeah, yeah, it's just more natural. I always liked, and I'm glad they kept this in the set. I always thought it was kind of fun in this room, the flowers that Kaylee draws
Yes.
on the baseboards. I was like, she's gotta try to make it a little bit a nicer place to live. It feels more like home, even though it's just this rickety bucket of bolts.
To answer your
Ruckety is
question,
not a
though,
word.
no, it's not.
I'm
It's
sorry.
not.
Oh,
To
real quick,
answer
I'm
your
sorry, I
question,
gotta mention you were talking about the Fox thing. I always thought that the fact that they aired the episodes out of order wasn't what killed this so much as just airing it at random times.
yeah, I agree. I can agree with that to an extent. To answer your question though about Out of Gas, actually I disagree. I don't think it would have worked so much as a pilot or as a first episode. Again, I feel it almost has what you would call a pilotitis, is in the going out of its way to introduce or reintroduce all the characters. I do think I think it works better where it is, actually, as sort of
Yeah, you're probably right. That was just my instinct when I first saw it.
yeah,
I re-
don't get me wrong. I still think I still consider it my favorite
Not
episode.
enough.
I just think it's, yeah, I still think it's just good where it is as sort of a reintroduction, and almost because it's not really an introduction so much as getting under their skin to a certain extent, and I don't want that given away too early kind of thing, as in a oh this is, because like if you see it as a pilot, it's almost a pat, this is how we met kind of story, whereas if it's a bit later, you've built up a kind of a mystery, and I wonder where these people came from, kind of thing, and then it gets answered.
The love bot is so creepy. It's really creepy. Earlier we were talking about if there is such a thing as laugh out loud moments in this movie, and again, now that I know these characters really well, there are some. For me now, the big one we talked over, and that is when somebody says intercurum masnik or whatever it is, and then Jane's like,
Yeah,
no, don't say it. It was
I love.
it was Simon that says that. He's like, "Don't say it." It's like, no, it only works on him. Did you, or it only works on her? Did you miss the part where she was like programmed?
Yeah,
So
I do
that was
love
really
that
funny.
part.
Two lines before that, Simon had said that she had conditioning, and clearly that went right over his head, and I think
Yeah.
that's really funny.
Oh, it's really good that he writes those characters in a way that because again, people who just came in for this movie have to be introduced to all these people, but they're just Whedon created them so distinctly that you're able to pick up on those nuances from just from little moments, just from pieces of dialogue, very economical in terms of getting a point across that this is the type of character that Jane is. He's the kind of person who wouldn't be able to who would make that kind of faux pas, that kind of silly mistake, and it fits into the character and lets somebody know that that is the kind of person he is.
Yeah, something that I think fans of this series always really appreciated. This probably goes without saying, but I feel it's obligatory. That this this world has such a language of its own. It's got
Hmm.
this really distinct lore, this really distinct mythos. But then, like, the way people talk is so interesting, and there was such an attention to detail with that in the show, in trying to create a believable future in what would people talk like in the future if they came from the present day that we have right now. I think Star Trek kind of attempted that, and other sorts of things have. I think this really nailed that, with not just the Chinese stuff, but the fact that people talk like they do now, but then they don't. A lot of the slang sort of sticks around. I like that in the same movie where people and TV show where people like speak Chinese and they have this kind of older world, almost Southern way of speaking.
Hmm.
They also still keep in words like stuff.
Yeah. This sounds like it's going off topic, but it actually, have you ever seen the movie Heathers?
Uh-uh.
Oh, it's
This is
actually written
dark.
by the.
By the way, sorry, I gotta say this. This is a dark, dark scene.
Yes, it is.
When she says bullet, that always stuck with me. When she says bullet in the brain pan squish and she smiles like that, that always stuck with me. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Heathers is a movie. It's actually written by the same guy who wrote Batman Returns, but I probably wouldn't give much credibility to you. I don't think, because I don't think you like the
It
movie
would
very much.
immediately get me to just rush out and find it. But go ahead.
Yeah. But no, that reminded me what you just said. He mentions in the commentary because he talked about writing the dialogue for the teenage characters in that movie and how he didn't want to use any kind of this is in the 80s like 80s type of
Yay,
slang
my
because of it.
favorite character.
Because it would immediately date the movie, and so he actually wrote his own slang for that, and it actually gives a more distinctive feel to that world. And you saying I think that's doubly true with the Firefly universe. The way that both again the fusion of the Chinese and also the sort of old world and also just their own sort of corruptions of American slang and curse words give it a much
Yeah.
more unique feel than if they just gone with something straightforward that already exists. But now it's something that's uniquely Firefly's universe.
I always thought
And
Goran was a really interesting kind of swear word.
yes. Mhm.
Because you can tell automatically the first time you hear it where it came from, and then it's kind of up to interpretation how exactly that evolved. I think that's really interesting. I think religion in this universe in general is really fascinating, and
Yeah.
you never know 100% if Shepherd Book really believes what he says he does, because you don't really know his backstory. And I like, by the way, that they call attention to the fact that you don't know it and you're not going to. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a comic book about it and it's really
Yeah.
good, but if you
Shepherd's
don't
Tale.
read that,
I've not read it. I have not read it yet.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was cool. It's reverse linear. It starts at the beginning and goes all the way back to the. It starts at the end and goes back to the beginning, which is
It
really
starts at the
cool.
beginning, really?
Yeah, it does. It start. No, no, it doesn't. It's
How novel.
yeah, isn't that unusual? But anyway, Shepherd Book was always my favorite character because of just how mysterious he is, and because I think Ron Glass is a really classy actor.
I've always loved Ron Glass ever since I watched Barney Miller as a kid. But well, yeah, okay. So since you say that though, I have to ask: was he your favorite character when this was the only thing you'd seen?
No, no, but when this was
because
the only thing
he's
I'd seen,
barely in
I
this.
yeah, and I certainly don't want to draw too much attention to the fact that I saw this first. I in the TV show, I just fell in love with him, man. I like I thought he was so incredibly interesting. I loved him as the voice of reason, of reason, and I really liked that. Even though we never really, like I said, the whole Shepherd thing is kind of a cover with him, and because we have. I think it's Out of Gas where we have I think where we have that character that's like that guy's not a shepherd, where like he's done some stuff, and he talks about how he's done some stuff, and clearly he has to have killed lots of people, whatever it is he did, and so like, but even still, from the beginning when we first met him in the TV show, I always thought it was really cool that he had such a like even keel way of looking at things where he wasn't forcing anybody to think the way he did, but he always managed to be the voice of reason even if he was talking to somebody who didn't believe what he believed, and he was
Yeah.
so level-headed about stuff. And then the juxtaposition of how level-headed is he really, because he used to be a killer of some sort. Even it's such a fascinating character, and could sometimes be really funny too, because that one
Special
I don't remember
hell.
what episode it is, but boy,
Oh,
that thing where like he has that
the
huge
special
crazy
hell line.
fro or whatever it was, I
Oh,
forget,
that was Jane, that was Janestown.
and then River like freaks out because he's got crazy creepy hair. I love that. That was great. This is a really interesting, nuanced scene. When I first saw this, or maybe the second time, I found myself not knowing what exactly was going on in this, but then completely buying that Mal got it. So like when I first saw this, I'm not seeing this conversation between Inara and Mal meaning that there's some horrible thing going on and that there's a trap that they're going to fly into. But then when he explains it to me, I totally buy that he picked up on it.
Mhm. To go back to Shepherd Book for a second, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
um, do you think that this movie suffered in any way from taking him off the ship completely and not having him be part of the crew at any point in this? Again, I mean, just reducing him to basically almost a cameo.
No, I mean, I want to be really disappointed by that. I want to be, I'd love to be kind of an irritated fanboy with that and be like, oh man, it's my favorite character. He needs to be on the ship. No, he's so serviceable in the role that he has here. It makes too much sense. Is the thing, because he wouldn't have always stayed on that ship. It makes sense that he left. It would have been nice to have had some context to know exactly why he left when he did, because he was still on the ship the last time we saw him. But I don't think this movie really works without Haven. I kind of like that. I kind of like that word. I like that Shepherd Book is their safe haven, and uh, not getting to see him all over this movie and unfortunately his having to be killed off is completely made up for, or the movie totally makes up for that with the conversation that he and Mal have together about belief, because that's such an important theme throughout this, and I really appreciate that Book has a hand in Mal finding himself in this movie. I think that's a really key moment, and I think that if he wasn't there and didn't say that, Mal might not get to where he does at the end of this.
Oh, I mean, I certainly agree that what's there is definitely important. Um, I don't know. I do wish he could have been in this
I think it
film
would be sorry. I think
more.
it'd be really funny if that pillow that we're looking at right now had X's and O's on it. I just want to throw
You're
that out
insane.
there because
You're insane.
it looks because that'd be funny. Anyway, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I don't know. I do find myself wishing he'd been in the. I mean, that's not really as I don't think it's just me being an angry fanboy about that, but
I'm not
I
accusing you of anything.
I know you're not. No, I mean, I certainly don't mind him being killed off. I like the way he was used. I just wish we could have used him a little bit more than
Oh, I know.
just
Me too.
he was in two scenes and that's it. And I just I mean, I just I never quite I understood why he was used the way he was in the scenes that he is in. I just never quite understood why it was ended up being so limited, though. I even read an interview with Ron Glass where he seemed to be really disappointed by that. Where he was like,
Oh,
"Yeah, I was just, yeah." He's like, "I was, yeah." He was like, "Yeah, you were in the movie." I was like, "Yeah, I was only for a day," and it sort of
I
felt like,
think Yeah, I think ultimately Whedon had to really kind of pare things down and decide what was most important for this. I mean, he had to be really economical. He talks a lot, and I hate to talk about director commentaries in a commentary, but
yeah, me too.
but I mean, I've heard him talk a lot about how he had like a 3.5 hour draft of this, and he had to cut it way down, and it makes a lot of sense. I think that if the series had continued. Book would have become a much more integral part of the show, and I think given that he had a movie to do all this work in, there was no way around what they did. Because the thing is, I think if he was on the ship, he Whedon might have had a hard time finding anything for him to do other than what he does in this already. And
Yeah,
so,
possibly.
taking him off and saying he's not part of the crew anymore, I think actually is more of a service to the character, especially when he says, "I'm not part of your crew," and Mal says, "Yeah, you are."
No,
I don't know, man.
I agree with that.
I think that
I agree with that.
yeah,
As in,
it sucks as a fan of that character, but I think Whedon did amazing work in making that character relevant for this
yeah,
film. I think the operative is so interesting.
me too. Definitely.
Um, really like this guy. Really like him as a dark mirror for Mal. My interpretation, as I was talking about earlier, of Mal being more like the Alliance than he'd like to admit in a broad sense. He is, he sees, I think, maybe some things in the operative that he. I don't know. I'm spitballing here. That I think he sees a little bit in him that he doesn't like about himself. Just in where he's been going lately. I don't think the operative is actually anything like Mal, but just in that the operative is willing to do anything to get what he wants, and Mal has been slowly going that way. But more so, I think that he sees this belief that he kind of wishes he could find because in himself, because at least this operative knows fully who he is and what he wants to be and is not apologetic about anything. And Mal's kind of all over the place right now. And
yeah.
so
Well, actually,
that
yeah, I was about to say that
he
too.
is a worthy adversary, and I love that. Like these are two men that have a great deal of respect for each other. I don't, I, and I like that the operative is very quick to admit that. I think the operative likes some things about Mal, and I think it's those things that are somewhat like him, where he's got that willpower, but I don't think Mal would ever admit that.
It's funny you should say that though, because yeah, I was about to say that too in terms of the belief thing. It's funny because again, as you mentioned with Shepherd Book, his last his dying words were just believe in something, that is supposed to be what turns Mal around. Him finding belief is what moves his character to a more positive level. But at the same time, you see the operative, who Inara does describe as a believer, but it's his belief is causing him to do all these terrible things, and also it's a very misguided belief. And once that's revealed to him, the operative, the one who is a believer, does lose everything because of that belief. So
Yeah,
it's not entire.
and sorry, go ahead.
Uh, no, I was off the rails. Go
and,
ahead.
and as I said, it's a movie about humanity. There is no person except for the Reavers in this, and for really good reason. There's no person in this that is just a straight up archetype, just a two-dimensional character, but more importantly, that is made to be robotic or fully programmed. Even River finds lucidity and finds some humanity again. But this guy at the end, we're going to find out, is a real person, and if only he knew what it was he was actually fighting for, he never would have done this in the first place.
Yeah,
I love that. I
yeah.
really like that.
It
I
is.
really like that. He's terrifying, but then you get to the end and you can somewhat sympathize for him. I like that I'm not his best friend at the end or anything. I'm not his biggest fan or anything, but I can still kind of see why. He's in denial. He wants to believe in a perfect world. He wants to believe that it's possible to make people better, meaning forcing them to be better. We get that idea right at the very beginning in that flashback where River says that they're telling people what to think, and that goes all the way to trying to force people to be the way we like them to be, and we find out that that's impossible. Um, I
Well,
really like that
the
we get to
funny
the end.
thing
He's a
about
real person. Nobody who knew that would do what he does.
about belief is that it all ends up being based on perspective and who ends up being quote unquote right, because it's the operative is he's the first to admit that he's a terrible person because of the things that he does, but he does them because he believes they're for a greater type of good. Only we know, we as the audience and also the crew find out later that it is totally wrong what he's doing, the idea, the belief that is based around is wrong. But then again, Mal, due to the belief that he picks up through River, ends up doing certain terrible things too, such as like strapping the dead bodies to desecrating the bodies in order to get his goal going along further, and it
Yeah.
all all just ends up as to who it is who ends up having the correct belief, or the belief that's actually based in something that they know is. And again, it could have so easily been switched around the other way, just because it's all based on something that you believe. It's not based on anything that's necessarily tangible. It's just, I believe this is the right thing to do, therefore it's justifiable.
Well, that's the case up until Mal actually discovers the truth. And I would argue that by the end, the film is saying that Mal has the correct belief and that this guy sees his god die. You know,
Oh
this
yeah,
guy
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sees that
yeah.
the god that he had was never. Because the thing is, I think that the film does to a degree advocate the idea that there is such a thing as necessary evil. It's just how far do you have to go? So I mean, we discover by the end that the evils that the operative does, the really horrible killing children stuff that he does, isn't ultimately necessary evil because what he believed wasn't true. And so ultimately the thing that Mal, and I mean he does some things that are awful too, but he doesn't kill children. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
And so there's some there's shades of gray. Maybe there is sometimes such a thing as necessary evil. What else could Mal do in that situation? Now you're right. At that point, we don't know who has the correct belief, and Mal at that point doesn't really have any belief except I want to keep my crew standing and stable and eating. You get to the end of the movie, and what he believes in is truth.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm certainly agree. The movie comes down obviously on the side of Mal. I'm just saying that it's almost like if you could change their circumstances around somewhat, then you could have a totally different result, just because of the
Oh, you're
fact
absolutely right. Yeah. No, I was just
that
using that
that
opportunity to make a point I was going to try to make at
yeah.
some point in this movie, and now I got to make it. So thank you.
No, yeah, it's just that they're so similar in some ways, and some of their belief and some of their motivation comes becomes partly because of happenstance, and where they happen to be aligned just through sheer coincidence, that's the way it works out for them. But it's all based on something. At least at first, it's not entirely tangible, something that can be
I want to mention
proven.
something real quick because we just passed a scene I wanted to talk about. River there, kind of going into her memory and going back to that area of that flashback. Oh, cool, we're still in it. You notice in this movie how often dark places are comforting and bright places are eerie and scary?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever consciously noticed that before, but yeah, actually, I think I have, because I think it was mentioned in his commentary to a certain extent that the
Okay,
movie
for
gets
the record, I've
brighter.
not seen that in a long time, so I'm not
Me,
trying to play
me
by
either.
play
No,
Joss Whedon's commentary, but that is an observation I made on my own, and I thought it was really interesting.
it
Um,
is. Yeah, yeah. He does say that it does get brighter as it goes along, especially like
well,
once you actually get to Miranda, it is full blown, just almost oppressively
yeah,
bright.
yeah. it's blinding, and and I think that it's like obscuring the truth. Now, of course, darkness also obscures truth. By the way, it's amazing that River is always able to do that, like hanging on the ceiling trick, and
Hang
she can
on
always
the
find
ceiling.
something right there. She can always find something to hang on to. There's always something right there. That's amazing. But yeah, of course, darkness is more often used as something that conceals truth. But most of the dark places in this movie are in their home,
Mhm.
and
Well, again, that's sort of why I mentioned earlier I wasn't just being a nitpicky fanboy when I said this at the beginning that I didn't like the way the cargo bay was lit, but that is actually the reason why because
okay, okay.
it's a much bright it changes the tonality of that to actually in a way that I think goes against what you're saying right here because I agree with what you're saying right here and I don't think the way that is actually although right here this is the one scene I'm talking about where it actually does match match that. It actually does have that sort of warm darkness to it that you're talking about.
I would make the argument that, and this is minor, but this is a little complaint. I would make the argument that what River does here in or what she just did in kicking over Simon there
Simon.
is sorry, what?
I was just saying Simon.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. It's always weird when you can't see the person you're talking to. I think that this is maybe a little bit of easy and cheap drama, because you've got
Oh,
that.
the
I
that you
think
didn't
what it's
ask.
yeah, I think what it's trying to do right now is give us this big dramatic reveal of Miranda's
Of
a planet, and
Miranda.
it wants to do that by making her seem like she's still being crazy and she's not lucid right now. And I think it's a little bit too much of a gimmick, because then he's going to come in and he's going to say, well, you could have just asked. I don't know if we needed all of that pomp and circumstance, but it's exciting for a minute, I'll give it that. But yeah, anyway, I don't know.
I don't know. Is it
A little
worth it
cheap.
though? Is it's cheap? Yes, but is it worth it?
Maybe so. No, absolutely. That's the thing, is that like Whedon isn't usually that cheap, but then when he is, I can kind of see why he did it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes that's a necessary evil.
Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, like, I couldn't, I don't know if I could see it happening any other way, really. It just wouldn't have any
Yeah.
kind of, it both would lack a punch, and also wouldn't really seem in character for River to just go, oh yeah, by the way, Simon, I'm thinking about this planet right now. Let's go look that up on the computer right now, and then we'll have this big, we'll have this big powwow about it. It just doesn't seem like something that she would be capable of doing.
Yeah, and also I can kind of see her perspective of nobody's believing me or trusting me right now, so
Yeah.
I have to do something. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's unfair to call that cheap. I don't know. That was
No,
my guttural reaction.
no, I agree it's cheap, but I think it's cheap in a way that works. That
It's
works
cheap in the
it's
right.
it's justifiable.
I do think it's weird that Jane kind of tries to do something to River, and then nobody ever really acknowledges that that happened
Yeah.
because something more important just happened.
Well, I guess they technically would never have had to know about it then, since I mean they weren't there at the time. So,
Yeah, and she doesn't tell them. He's just
yeah.
kind of walking around with an ice pack. So
Yeah.
this is where that really oppressive bright lighting comes in that you were talking about, and it's very effective. This scene is nothing. Oh no, I'm sorry, not this
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
That's later. That's later on Miranda. Sorry,
We're in
I was
Haven,
jumping
not
ahead.
Miranda.
Sorry, what?
So we're at Haven, not
Or Haven,
Miranda.
not yeah. I know. I forgot this scene happens first because they have to create the abomination of the ship. Okay, well, I was gonna call that later scene chilling. This is maybe that's not the right word for this, but this is a very uncomfortable scene.
Yeah.
Boy, when Mal like I mean when he shoots that guy and to making everybody put the bodies on the ship, and oh man. And like again, I can totally see why he's doing it. He's being
Yeah.
the kind of leader he needs to be right now.
Yeah.
But you don't want to condone it, and yet what else is he gonna do? He's got to go through Reaver territory. It must have been very satisfying for Firefly fans to come in this and kind of within the first half an hour get the sense that, oh man, they're going to pay off the Reavers.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you really hadn't even really hadn't even seen a Reaver in the show. Actually, they only ever been a focal point in 2 episodes, in a
Yeah,
very early episodes too. Without it,
they're
after that,
just
they weren't even mentioned again.
this kind of ominous looming threat in the background where you're like, eventually they're going to do something with this.
Yeah,
You always got the sense that they were sort of zombie-like, but you didn't know a lot about them. And,
yeah.
and and there was a lot of talk about, there's all these tales about what they really are, but nobody really knows. And now we're gonna kill off my favorite character, and that's really sad.
But I love Nathan Fillion's performance, especially that yell he just did, where he turns back and yells that "Come on" to Simon. Like he just, there's so much desperation in that that really just marks that pivotal moment in his character. And I don't know, like Fillion can be so goofy and comedic, but he really has some good dramatic chops in this movie too.
Well, a lot of directors like to say that they hire really
Comedian,
good
yeah,
comedic
comic,
actors
yeah,
to
yeah.
do serious roles because comedy's really hard to play, and if you can do that, a lot of the time you can turn around and do drama. And a lot of our and like if you look at our culture, that's true. A lot of our most beloved comic actors are every bit as good or better as dramatic actors.
Hey Cap,
Yes,
you're gonna hate me for saying this, but that was
yes.
mentioned in the commentary.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Oh man,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't
The
remember that.
both the doctor at the beginning and the scientist you see in the hologram on Miranda were both mentioned to be primarily comedic actors hired for that
Oh, I didn't remember that. Well,
express
look, it's not
purpose.
my fault that every time Whedon talks about something, he's really dense with all of his information. I'm just making observations.
No, it just means you are both on the same wavelength and you're very smart.
I think it's kind of fun that Mal cuts off the operative right in the middle of this big, great speech. I kind of wanted to know what he was going to say when I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to know the end of it. And like it's almost unintentionally funny because this is a really gripping, really serious, heavy moment. But like he's just gonna keep talking, and then Mal's like, "Nope, I don't have it. I don't want to listen to you anymore." I think that's the scene.
It is a scene, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that line. I'm a monster. He's a necessary monster. I have
Yeah,
no
I
illusions about it, but it must be done.
mhm. And again, it's all because of that faith, and even though it's a misplaced faith, that can cause you to do quite a few interesting things just because you believe in it so much.
And isn't this interesting too? Part of Mal like finding his way back to himself is even in this guy that is a monster reminding him of his own humanity. Oh, I love stuff like that.
Mhm.
He says you're not a reaver. Like even the bad guy is helping him get there.
Yeah,
Unintentionally. Oh man. Like how fully realized real people are everybody in this movie, right? Like there's not a just straight up archetype in this movie. Jane comes close, but only because he doesn't get, and that's not fair because not in the show, but he just doesn't get a lot to do in this movie. That was a lot of that was a complaint that a lot of people have when this came out, was that Jane doesn't get enough to do.
really, I never really noticed that before, but I mean, I
I
guess
didn't
I don't know.
either, but I'm not a big Jane fan. I like him, but like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have
I
that.
was planning to say the same thing too.
Yeah, I don't have that
I
obsession that a lot of people do, and I don't have that obsession with Kaylee that a lot of people have either. And I like her, but I don't like latch on to her like a lot of people do.
I just took I think it was BuzzFeed's which Joss Whedon heroine are you, and I got Kaylee.
I had the same
I could.
thing with I had the same thing with Fred and Angel. I liked her okay, but I didn't know what the like big obsession with her was.
Well, I can sort of identify with her to a certain extent, although I think in terms of the series at least, I like the whole uh, Simon and Kaylee will they won't they thing, but Kaylee always seemed to come across as kind of annoying in that sense. As like it's pretty obvious that Simon can just trip over his words and cut him some slack, dang it, don't get
Oh, I
angry
felt the same
so
way.
you know.
That was easy. That was easy. 7 o'clock drama stuff,
Yeah, it was just
in
yeah,
my
it
opinion.
was yeah,
Um,
it was a big
Boy, the look
cliche.
of this ship is great, man. I
Yeah,
it's haunting and horrifying, and you know, I don't know if I don't know if anybody ever did like models or toys of the Serenity ship, but it'd be cool if somebody put out that version.
yeah.
You know, they had all the blood all over it. Well, at least the red paint that looks like blood. I think it's
Yeah, I mean,
really, really smart, by the way. Sorry, I just thought of this, that they have Mal say, "I need red paint." Now, I don't know how hard it would have been for them to find red paint right there, or if they had any on the ship or something. But like, I think maybe that line was there intentionally so that we wouldn't think that Mal
I
was
think it was
so gruesome that he actually used the blood of their friends. Because somehow that's worse than using the bodies. I don't know
yeah.
why, but that seems worse to me.
Would that even work though? I've often thought about that, like, especially in terms of the Reavers. Like, if you painted a spaceship that has to go through planetary re-entry with blood, wouldn't the blood just sort of burn off?
Maybe they wait till they get up there and then they put Reavers in spacesuit and they send out the spacesuit Reavers and then they like, man, that would be a really creepy Gravity parody. I could just see it now. We haven't talked at all yet about the title of this film, which seems like an obvious title, and yet it has so much more to do than with just the name of the ship.
This is
And
true.
that.
No, no, I was trying to formulate my thoughts on this because I always found it kind of interesting just how often that title gets used just because it was obviously as you said it's the name of the ship. It was also the name of the pilot episode, and it's also the name of this movie, and so it does get bandied
And it's
around
in
quite a bit.
the theme song.
Yeah, and so I mean, you know, as much as it does have thematic significance, it's almost in a way just because it's used so much, it can almost become lost just because it does get used possibly more than it needs to. It's just because it works so perfectly thematically here that you don't want to overuse it elsewhere where it doesn't have that same kind of connotation.
I agree with you, and I don't think that they use the name of the ship too many times in the film or anything.
No, no, no,
But I
not the
think that
film.
a lot of
I
people,
just mean in the franchise as a whole, as a
yeah,
title. Again, as
exactly,
the pilot.
and
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people probably would watch this movie and never even think of that. But I love double entendre titles like that,
Hmm.
and I think that the pilot had the same double entendre title. But I think that here it works even better because what is the Alliance trying to create with the Reavers?
Serenity.
You know, serene people.
That's what it
Uh,
means. Oh my gosh.
yeah, no, I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I'm
You're a
saying that a lot of people
genius.
probably but I'm saying a lot of people probably wouldn't have thought of that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I like that. Some of the best movies, some of the best stories are things that you go back to over and over again and you pick up on new things. So I think it's somewhat okay that it's become a little bit just sort of like you use so much that the name becomes stale. Because when you finally realize it, it's like, oh yeah, there's more going on with that title. I'm such a title guy.
Did you know this was a high school they filmed this at?
No, that's cool.
Would you
Was
have
that
gone to school in a place like this?
was that in the commentary? It looks like a prison.
It was in the
I mean, I
commentary.
know a lot of high schools look like prisons. By the way, her dress is both kind of neat and really creepy right there. Like when River's dress is like florally right there. Like at first I didn't even realize it was a dress, but then they shoot it from above, and then it's like
Yeah.
kind of flailing out, and I'm like, there's something like oddly disconcerting about that. Well, I guess now that I'm looking at it, of course it's a dress. I guess I'm just saying I didn't expect it to like be able to floral out like that. I don't know why I'm talking about that. Anyway, um,
It's fine with me. Everybody knows I have an affinity for long flowy dresses. So
of course it makes perfect sense that all of this architecture is colored white. We've got all this white stuff. We've got all this really bright lighting, all indicative of what the intention was here, and made that much more just absolutely creepy. when you finally find out what's really going on. In fact,
Yeah, like that body right there.
I don't even think the bodies are as creepy as just the general atmosphere of what this place looks like deserted. A
Yeah.
complaint that I have that I just remembered I wanted to mention is Mal, and you'll know this from being a Star Trek fan because this happens a lot in a lot of science fiction shows. Mal takes his space helmet off way too quickly. Because they're like, oh, we have readings that it's breathable air. Let's take our helmets off. Why don't you investigate a little bit more and find out why there's this giant deserted city and 12 more just like it that you flew past? Because you don't need to see bodies before it might occur to you that there was a virus that could still be in the air.
Well, in its defense, though, if you're gonna compare it to Star Trek, at least they actually put the spacesuit on.
No, no, I know. And that's why ultimately I should probably give it somewhat of a pass. But I mean, like, I don't want to err on the side of, well, this is a movie I really like, so it does nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's things like that I feel the need to point out because it is a really darn good film that doesn't skip very many beats. But then when I see things like that, it's more of a amusing little tidbit than really a huge problem. But I don't know.
In
If
terms
I
of,
was him, I wouldn't have taken my space helmet off that quickly.
oh, I wouldn't have either. In terms of the fact that this movie is so intelligently written and works on so many different levels, just in terms of being an action film and a cerebral science fiction,
I'm glad you
you
said.
know,
Yeah.
cautionary tale. I think it's funny. I'm not sure which home release of this you happen to have, but I don't know. I always struck me that they really didn't necessarily know how to market this properly. Because if you look at the DVD box, it just everything written on there just seems so kind of generic-y. Like at the top it says experience the ultimate action adventure. It feels like I'd read that on like 50 other different bargain bin sci-fi movies. And also just in terms of the way the advertising portrays River. Like I would never I don't know if I even would have recognized this as River if I hadn't didn't know who she was, the way that they have her hair and makeup done up. It's like they really weren't sure how to market this the way it actually to take advantage of its strengths. I don't think. Maybe that's just me.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And, usually when you see a DVD box that has something that generic written on it, like this is the selling point of the movie, it's usually really bad or not, or
Yeah.
really mediocre, right? Like, you wouldn't, if you'd never. Okay, here's the thing. And I don't mean to talk too much about this, I've been worried about that. When I first saw this, I rented it at a video store only because it was a sci-fi movie that was new. I'd never seen it before, and it had Joss Whedon's name on it. I didn't even know when I first watched it that it was the sequel to Firefly because I hadn't seen Firefly, and I'd only ever heard about it sort of in passing. So not only did I see this before Firefly, I saw it and didn't even realize there was a TV show attached to it. And I didn't really expect much from it, partly because of what you're talking about. And yeah, clearly they didn't know how to market this movie. The first thing I would have done, the first step would have been to have put out the well, I don't know when they put out the DVD box set. Maybe they already had done that, but I would have like marketed the crap out of the TV show at the same time. Like I would have had a bunch of advertising like. This movie's coming out, and here's this critically acclaimed show that has this huge cult following that Fox was idiots with and shut down. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure that the studio was really like had a lot of faith in this project,
Well, I mean, actually,
and that that
in terms of
shows.
that, it's well, yeah. In terms of that, I guess that'd be kind of difficult though, considering that it's two different studios with a competing product that they don't necessarily have the rights to. So I guess you could
Oh,
say
I
that
didn't think of that. Okay, you win. No, you're absolutely right about that. Okay, well that would have been impossible. But I don't know. I don't remember seeing a lot of advertising for this when it came out. Like it didn't have a. I mean, it would have. Whoever put it out now, it would have a better marketing campaign just because viral marketing and stuff is so much of a bigger deal than it was back then. I mean, I think it's easy to look at this for guys like us our age, Lance, and forget that this was 8 years ago and
uh,
like how different.
almost 9 years ago. It'll be 9 this year.
Isn't that
It's an accurate.
amazing? First of all, time is so different now with regards to entertainment and technology. And I've said this a bunch of times, but like, boy, the difference between the 10-year difference, if this was the year 2000 to 1990, so much vaster than the difference between now and 2005, right? Like, this looks like a movie you could have made last week.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at anything in this going, well, if only they had the technology we have now, this would look better. No, everything holds up, of course. And I guess what I'm saying is the only thing that is really different, has nothing to do with the way the project was made, but everything to do with what the internet looks like. And I think if this came out today, it would sell bigger. It would have bigger ticket sales.
Well, there's that. I also think I have something to do with some of the status of the people involved now at this point. Now. I mean, Joss Whedon was already a fairly big name in television at the time,
Oh,
but
I
now
wasn't even thinking of that, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
now he has the Avengers under his belt. They could have marketed the crap out of that. If this had come out in the past couple of years, this would have been huge.
Oh
Just
yeah,
just ba- just based on the Avengers, and Nathan Fillion's a lot bigger in his career now too than he was in 2005.
yeah, and that's interesting. And then nobody else, right? Like Summer Glau has had a good career, but she's not in any
Yeah.
bigger name now than she was back then. She's usually on some TV show, but like she's not a huge star. Not Fillion level.
No.
And pretty much everybody else in the show has done kind of minor work. Alan Tudyk's done some voice work.
Is it Wreck-It
Uh,
Ralph?
not much else. Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what Gina Torres has done
She
since
was
then.
she was in. I remember there's one. It was might have been a Chris Rock movie. I think she was in. I don't know. I don't remember. It
Oh
was several
really?
years
Weird.
ago.
I
Maybe.
don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't.
I
I
might be
don't
thinking of
think.
somebody else.
A lot of these guys I don't think have had the career that they could have. I think Gina Torres is a really great actress. I think she could have been in. She should have had a bigger career. I think Summer Glau has had a deservedly good career. I'm
Yeah.
glad that she continues to be cast in things. She was pretty
She
good
got
in.
Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yeah, but she's continued to be in stuff since that. She's a recurring character on Arrow right now. Like she's always on some
What?
TV show. Yeah, they haven't used her enough in that yet. And she hasn't and she doesn't look like she's aged a day. Like I don't understand.
It's actually kind of funny. As I mentioned before, I really hated when Wash ended up dying on this, and of course we're coming up to that now, and he has his now sort of classic in fandom, slogan, I'm a leaf on the wind, watch how I soar" thing, and for a while after I first saw this movie, whenever I would drive in my car, which I actually did name Serenity, and I still have that car. I would often say that when I was driving, "I'm a leaf on the wind, watch how I soar." And my fiance at the time, she would always hate when I'd say that because she thought I was tempting fate and I was gonna get paled while I was driving.
Yeah, I was gonna say that would be the last thing I would ever say behind the wheel of a car or any other motor vehicle. I'd be like, before I say this, I'm gonna look around and make sure that there's not some giant rod that could pop out and stab me through the chest. That is consequently the line that the new Serenity comic book that just happens to have started last week is called Leaf on the Wind, and it's the as far as I know, the first series that has actually done anything directly post Serenity. It is the direct sequel to this stuff, and we're 2 issues in. I don't know why they put the first 2 issues out 2 weeks in a row, but it's solid, and you should read it. It's quite good.
Yeah, I'm so far behind on all the post Serenity material for this franchise. I've the only comics I've read are the Serenity, Those Left Behind, the sort of in between events from the series, the bridge events from the series to the movie.
That
But
was pretty good.
I've yeah, those are really good. But I haven't gotten to read anything since then. Like I haven't read Shepherd's Tale or I've gotten behind in what's left of this franchise, unfortunately. As much as I love it, I just haven't kept up to date lately.
Well, like I said, I'm really suggesting people read that book. It feels very much like this thing is back. Reading it's Zach Whedon writing, and he's tearing it up. I do think, and I hope I'm not reading too much into this when I say this. I think the leaf on the wind line is really interesting. I mean, yeah, it just sounds good, but and I like that Mal walks in. He's like, "What does that even mean?"
Me.
Which anytime a character in a movie says, "What does that mean?" it immediately makes my mind race trying to figure out this the there he goes the symbolic significance. I think it's interesting that a movie that is all about control and people controlling other people and people and like Mal feeling out of control and feeling like whatever he does something else is always oppressing him. I think it's interesting to see Wash say I'm a leaf on the wind in like the idea of not having full control becomes a positive thing. And that's kind of interesting because you think a leaf on the wind just goes wherever the wind goes.
Yeah, I
And,
never had thought about that before.
of course, that's also what Mal does. He goes where the wind goes, but intentionally.
Oh,
And
I
then
like
what?
that. I like that.
And so then what does it mean when after saying that line he gets
He
killed?
dies.
Ultimately, he didn't have that control. I think that's interesting. I don't think I'm formulating a complete thought, but but it's interesting.
Well, if we make others think, or if you make
I'm not
others
sure if I.
think, then they can
Yeah,
sort of
exactly.
fill in the
Yeah, I'm not
gaps.
sure I
Then
fully latched
you've done
on to
your
what
job.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm admitting that I don't have a complete idea here, but I think there's maybe something to some of that. Oh, I forgot they have an EMP in this. Did they have an EMP in the series?
I don't think so.
Huh, that's interesting. See, the fact that they have that means that they could even potentially handle the robots in the Matrix.
You know, I've never seen The Matrix.
Oh man, it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about something. I've done a few commentaries for another YouTuber, Magpie2541, and it's something that always happens about this time is because he's like I remember we did one of the Back to the Future movies, and since he's in Australia, his movies are PAL format. And so we get to a certain point in the movie and realize we were hopelessly out of sync with each other because PAL runs slightly faster than NTSC, and so it's impossible to do a synced up commentary with each other. And I'm just it's nice not to have to worry about that this time.
So I think it's interesting that we are half an hour uh, before the end of this, and every time I get to this part of the movie, it really feels like it's almost over. You know, like it feels like we got 10 minutes, but there's still a whole half an hour left. And I think a lot of the reason it feels like that is this in a lot of ways plays like one long, elaborate action scene, and yet it never feels like it's degenerated into action over story. It manages to keep getting a lot of story done while having explosions and space battles, and then here pretty soon gun battles.
So going into this for you, again, not having this series familiarity, um, and not having that sort of series attachment to the characters. I mean, did you? Because again, you sort of had the setup here with Shepherd Book and then with Wash. Oh, um, that yeah,
You notice how everybody's faces are and I think it's deliberately lit up red there
yeah.
right before that happens. There's a lot of things kind of foreshadowing that here and there. Anyway, I'm sorry. What?
I mean, is because I know that Joss Whedon said his intention for this was to sort of do like a Dirty Dozen type of feeling where you think that like a Wild Bunch that anybody could die or everybody might die. Is that something that you actually like when you were watching this for the first time? Would you believe that this is going to be a complete failure of an ending for our heroes kind of thing? Did that actually work for you?
Oh, I remember thinking this movie was so depressing that I expected. Yeah, I expected everybody to die at the end. I absolutely did when they
And
started
of
just
course, like
picking them off like flies. Yes,
yeah, pretty sure like
I couldn't see the optimism in it yet, you know. And I mean, like, I think if you've seen the TV show, you expect a more uplifting ending of some sort. I love that with Mal we have a hero could be argued in some cases to be somewhat of an anti-hero. I think he's a little bit of both. That you've got a guy who does a lot of the wrong things, and at the end of the day, we still really appreciate him and are kind of on his side, even if we can't condone everything he does. And most importantly, his bad behavior is never glorified.
I agree. Actually, that's what reminds us of me of the conversation we were having before we started this commentary about being able to put labels on things and how the difference between a sympathetic and empathetic character as opposed to a role model type figure that you brought up
Yeah.
before we did this.
Well, it's on my mind a lot, reviewing stuff like this. I love that you can have a movie like this that is at the same time, really it can be really dark and depressing, and is not just a straight up idealistic kind of piece. Like you were saying before, it's not like Star Trek where like we're usually always on the side of the good guys, and you'll have some kind of a like morality play playing out, but like in this, it's just more complicated than that, and yet you can get to the end and feel like you don't want to slit your wrists walking out of the movie theater unless you're a huge Wash fan, in which case none of the optimism or the altruism of the end of it, if there is any at all, would sink in at all. You
Exactly.
would
I
just
mean, there's pretty much nothing in this film after Wash dies. It's just complete
not
meaningless fluff and
yeah, not altruism. That's not the right word, but optimism. I like the goldfish shot there. I think that there's a little bit of symbolism there. The fish in a bowl. We've had now this world open up for us, and the alliance is still treating its subjects like fish in a bowl. They don't want them to know everything that is outside. There's a lot of stuff in this about history being written by the victors and that kind of stuff. We didn't talk about this earlier with the operative, but I also really like the use of the operative sword.
Mm.
And again, we're talking a lot in this movie about history, and he immediately, when he first uses the sword, is talking about the history of civilizations where people, if they screwed up real bad, would throw themselves on the sword because, after all, they only live to serve the state, and the sword being the kind of icon of the um, of the control of the state. And I think it's also neat that we're bringing in so many different cultural icons and ideas in one place, because you argued that this doesn't feel as much like a western as the TV show, and then it's interesting that the western stuff is there and the sci-fi stuff is there, but then suddenly we're bringing in like medieval sword stuff.
Yep. And at this point in the movie, a certain amount of slasher horror genre as well.
Well, that's true.
In
Good
this.
point. Yeah, it's a melting pot of all kinds of stuff.
Mhm. I mean, in fact,
It all
again,
fits together like one cohesive piece.
yeah, and again, like as you said before, all the Western stuff is still there tonally as well. Because I mean, again, this is almost like a sort of Mexican standoff at the end of a Western type of film. It's just that the trappings and the aesthetic has given way to a much more science fiction futuristic look to it.
I think the soundtrack in a lot of places continues to help it have that Western vibe.
Hmm.
I always loved that they went with that kind of pseudo bluegrass stuff.
Yeah, I love the soundtrack. I own the soundtrack for this movie, and actually, it's kind of weird. I
Ooh,
brought up
I
Heather.
should probably listen to that. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, actually, I brought up the movie Heathers before, and I remembered actually they have the same composer, both this movie and that movie.
Oh, that's fascinating. Cool.
It's a very different soundtrack though. It's much more 80s synth.
Wow, what is with Inara's crossbow? That is a wicked looking instrument of death. Did you see that?
Yep, it was. I was actually digitally added. It was actually just originally just a regular bow and arrow, and they made it futury in post production.
That's really funny. Yeah, I question a couple of the kind of sort of futury things in this because, I kind of like that there's a lot of futuristic technology, but then most things are just what they look like. We don't if we have a hammer, we don't have to make it look like a future hammer.
Yeah,
That's something that's always silly in Star Trek sometimes, where you're just like everything has to look like a future thing, where like it wouldn't add anything to it. I sort of question the gravestones at the end of this a little
oh
bit
yeah,
the,
with
with
the
the
holograms.
holograms.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I guess I kind of get why it's there, but then the gravestones themselves look like they're out of 1885.
yeah. And again, I mean, I guess like you say that for a lot of the aesthetics in this compared to the TV show, where it's like Serenity, they instead of having that ATV they had before in the series, they have a giant hovercraft, and then they have all these. Oh yeah, instead of that little grainy, snowy video monitor they had in the TV series, they had this giant row of like flat screen monitors all over the bridge, and now instead of those old timey Western tombstones they probably would have had this been in the series, that we get holograms. And it's like,
The
how are that? It's like, no wonder you guys are so down on your luck with money right now. You've been spending it all on these holograms
well,
and
these fancy toys.
hovercrafts.
Yeah, Mal
Yeah.
pretends like he's always really down on his luck, but he's just a really frivolous spender. If he would just quit maxing out his credit cards.
And now this movie is totally ruined. All of its themes have been stripped away, and the characters make no sense anymore. Their
Once
actions are
again,
frivolous.
once again, we've got this operative who has no name. I think that's important to mention. We didn't talk about that, and who he doesn't remember, he doesn't know the stuff about the Reavers. He's not about what the secrets are. He just keeps them, and he continues to reflect Mal's humanity back to him, pretending like he has none of his own. I think it's really interesting that he comes up and shoots Mal in the back,
Back.
and Mal is surprised. That's something he wouldn't have done. And Mal's capable of all kinds of stuff. That's something Jane would have done, but Mal wouldn't have done that. And
I don't know.
so like,
I don't know. In the TV series, Mal did kick that guy into the engine, but
okay. Well, at least okay. At the
that
very
was fun.
least,
That was funny though, and this is
you're
serious. That's the
remembering.
difference.
You remember? Yeah. You're no. You're absolutely right. That's the thing. Yeah. You're remembering things I didn't remember. I guess what I'm saying is that's something Mal would like to think he wouldn't do, and that means that and my point is that having that kind of like I guess idealism isn't the right word, but having those kinds of at least supposed standards means that he's not quite as far removed from his humanity as he thinks he is.
Well, see, I actually saw that as slightly different in terms of I don't think it's that Mal thinks he's above that. I actually think that he almost seems kind of satisfied when he says, "You shot me in the back," as in I just brought you down to my level. I finally gotten you to a point where you're like real people now, like me.
Oh, maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe that is it. Because Mal thought it was weird before that he shows up without any weapons.
Hmm.
By the way, we didn't talk about that, but I really love that line where he
He's
gets
like,
up from
I'm unarmed.
shooting. And he goes, I'm wearing full body armor. I am
I'm
not a
not a
moron.
moron. Yeah.
He's that actor, by the way, is wonderful.
I love his name too, Chiwetel Ejiofor. That's just fun to
Yeah.
say.
See, I said the actor because I wasn't even going to attempt that. Wasn't gonna even attempt it.
Oh, they can't close the door. This is bad news.
Oh, I forgot about Kaylee's those are tattoos, aren't they?
Wait, where? Wait, what? Sorry, what are we talking about?
Does Kaylee have tattoos, or does she just have a really funny, a really weird shirt underneath? Maybe it's just that shirt. I guess I was trying to remember
Yeah, that's her
if.
shirt.
See, I was trying to remember. I thought maybe that guy that she was dating in the flashbacks
Oh,
in Out of Gas
Bester?
gave her tattoos, but maybe not. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong.
I'm pretty sure he had tattoos.
Okay, that must be what I was. Never mind. That was a cool shirt. That looked for a moment like maybe it was tattoos.
Tattoos are not a sexually transmitted disease, Cap.
Oh, oh, oh.
She didn't get them from
Sorry.
Bester.
I can be somewhat naive sometimes, Mr. Fusion. I'm sorry.
Hey, am I allowed to make that joke on this channel? Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, I don't know. It's borderline. I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it. I think it's kind of important that this use of sound or the lack thereof is interesting. I think it's really important here that River will start intentionally using her crazy mad fighting skills while she's totally lucid. And that's kind of her moment of taking control.
Mhm.
And Mal will have his right afterwards.
Do you think that Joss Whedon has an obsession with teenage girls who are can be
Yes, he
vicious
does.
killers?
Oh yes, he's notorious for that. Yeah, and he's not shy about it.
No, he's not.
Unabashedly so, yeah. Well, I mean, he created Buffy at a time where there was not a surplus of those.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
And
mean, I still wouldn't say there's a surplus of them. I mean, there's certainly more than we've had in the
no,
past. I wouldn't say there's too many.
it's certainly not surprising to people now like it might have been before.
Yeah.
Something I read about this once, and boy, I wish I could cite the
Love the
source. I can't remember
screwdriver.
the book. Oh yeah, that's hilarious. See, it's not
That's
a
a laugh.
space screwdriver. It's just a screwdriver.
Yeah, space screwdriver.
It's a. You remember Star Trek Generations, the space photo album?
Yeah, actually, I was about to say there's a commentary on Firefly where on the episode The Message where they refer to the mail carrier as a spajou, a space Jew.
That's hilarious. There was I want to mention this real quick. I can't remember the name of the book. I read this years ago. I was reading a book that was kind of analyzing superhero fiction, and it talked a lot about Buffy, and interesting that it was lumping Buffy in with superheroes, but it was talking a lot about how Buffy came out in a period where you would have strong female characters, but they always had to be on a path of redemption or be atoning for something. Almost as if they had to pay for the fact that they got to be strong characters. Like Buffy got to just be a girl who got superpowers.
Mhm.
You juxtapose that with you compare that to Xena Warrior Princess, where yeah, kind of a strong female character. She's got her own TV show and she's butch and she's strong and she beats people up, but she used to be this horrible woman that ran around and massacred people. And I had never really thought about that until I
Yeah,
read that.
I'd never really thought. I mean, I think I might have actually realized, but I never really thought about it before, or at least it might have been something that I was subconsciously aware of. I don't know, but yeah, I've never thought about that before.
I thought it was
But
just
yeah,
something
but
to think
I
of.
think that's right. I think you're right about that.
That always stuck with me.
Actually, I was just thinking about this in terms of the other like the non-Mal and River characters. It is like just you sort of have to. It is interesting that they're all on board with this because it is at this point it's only kind of a miracle that Mal's able to actually get this sent out and also be able to convince the operative not to just kill them all because this is pretty much just a suicide mission for them. They're waiting until the Alliance of the Reavers comes and just blows them all away. And it's not their character arcs that are at stake right now. It's not their personal tale of redemption or of finding themselves or of saving the world. They're just sort of along for the ride, and that kind of amuses and frightens me at the same time.
That's a good point. Although, they're trusting their leader,
Yeah.
and they did that all the way to the edge of Reaver space. So I think I would expect that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
And
definitely
plus,
expect it. Oh, so,
Zoe just lost her husband. Like she's got to fight for something.
yeah.
And frankly she's got revenge going for it. Frankly, I would argue that there are more personal stakes going on here than you're letting on, because what is River fighting for? Her brother's life. You've got Kaylee, who's hurt, and is it Kaylee or Zoe right now who's in trouble? I think it's Kaylee. And
Pretty much all of them have been injured at this point.
but I mean, like injured to the point of maybe gonna die pretty soon if he doesn't get hit. Because wasn't it like he's got to get his satchel.
Mm.
real quick for I think Kaylee. So I'm just saying that like there's more going on than just we're fighting for Mal. They're all kind of
Oh
stuck
no,
in
no,
it.
yeah, but I'm saying like, yeah, but they, of course, they wouldn't necessarily be in this situation where they're dying right now, except to serve this purpose.
Yeah, I agree with you, but like they were in this situation the whole time in the ship, so
Yeah,
it's just an extension of what they were already doing. But no,
yeah.
I see where you're coming
No,
from
no,
though.
no, I mean, this certainly isn't a complaint for me saying, "Oh, I wish they had something more to do." I'm saying I find that kind of fascinating, just to think about it from their perspective for a moment, where they're sort of stuck without knowing what's going on, or if they're even going to be able to accomplish anything other than just to come there to die. And
Yeah,
I find that kind of
that's
fascinating to
true.
think about.
You were there. There's the kind of poster shot. In fact, it's not kind of the poster. That is the poster shot. There's you were talking earlier about whether or not we might think that the operative would have existed were it not for this movie. I think the operative, at least within the context of this film, is such a great foil for Mal.
Oh yes,
I think that I really like him as Mal's arch nemesis, and they go their own ways at the end, and I think it's really kind of a cool subverted thing to have him not get killed at the end, and for him to not be really the same person he was at the beginning as he is at the end. But and I don't really know what could possibly be done with him were he to ever return. So he's not like a proper arch nemesis because he's not the kind that would keep coming back like
yeah.
like the Joker or Green Goblin or someone. But just for the sake of this movie, I really like that. I like that again they're kind of mirrors for each other, and I really like that both of them come to a point where they admit that we are willing to die for our beliefs. And Mal's not a character you would ever expect to ever say that he would be willing to die for a belief.
It's funny though, because in terms of the operative, it's almost like you could look at him as a character wise as being almost kind of deceptively simple, in a sense that since he is a believer, and because he even admits in the movie that he calls himself evil, that
Yeah.
that there's just, okay, he's the evil guy, he's gonna do evil things, but at the same time it's not that, because if he was just doing this for the sake of being evil, like a sort of cartoon mustache twirling villain, he wouldn't be the kind of person who could just make that change at the end, where he sees what it is, because again he's doing evil for what he thinks is a necessary cause, not because he enjoys being evil, as as it were. So it's kind of fascinating to think that he calls himself evil, but at the same time it's that's not exactly what he is.
I like that Inara created the Serenity logo.
Yeah,
It also took me a few viewings
to notice
to
River.
realize that River is at the top of this scene.
Yeah. Is that too creepy?
It's a little creepy. But what I like about it, yeah, that's hilarious. But it's great. What I like about it is that it tells you that this movie is not cookie cutter. We haven't done the really obligatory character arcs where people were bad people at the beginning and they're good
Yeah.
people now. You know, they are still who they were at the beginning, and they've grown and they've learned things and they've gone through character arcs, but they're not obligatory character arcs. It feels like the kinds of lessons that real people might learn within this time
Yeah.
frame, and they get to the end, and they're not suddenly now fully complete people, and now there's no reason to tell stories about them. They're no more perfect now than they were at the beginning,
Yeah.
but maybe they're a little bit better than they were before.
Hmm. Again, it's the same thing with the operative too. He didn't have this sort of story of redemption where he was the evil guy and he became the good guy. It's just that he figured out where what it is, his beliefs changed, and that's pretty much most of that's what changed with him. Not he didn't find out something new about himself or the power of friendship or some sort of pat reason like that. It's just that he changed the way he believes.
Yeah, and he and Mal aren't going to be best friends now. I
Yeah,
really like that Mal says, I'd like to shoot you if I see you again.
yeah,
So like, he is the thing you got to keep in mind with him is he was still a human being because he was able to validate what he did because he thought it was necessary, but he's capable of things that Mal would like to think he's not capable of.
I mean, he's also done things to Mal personally that
Yes.
he won't be able to forgive. Just go, oh yeah, come on, join our side. We're gonna have fun on a ship together now.
Yeah, imagine that line. Imagine if that had ended with Mal saying, "Well, what are you gonna do now?" And he's like, "I think I'm going to go put on a cape and become a superhero." I mean, like, how else could that have possibly ended?
Yeah,
We didn't talk about Inara at all in this film. I've always been somewhat indifferent toward her and Mal's relationship.
yeah,
I think it works. I think it's fine. I don't like get giddy with anticipation like some fans do.
yeah, me
I guess I
either.
just latch. I guess I don't latch on to a lot of the romantic stuff in this, and it's not just because I'm a guy and I don't care about romance.
Me either.
It's okay romance. One thing I always really loved, and one of the things that's sad about Wash dying is how cool is it to see a like happy, stable,
Yeah,
married couple?
exactly.
Never happens, and I mean, like, they have their marital problems, but like,
Well, but I mean,
they
yeah, they're realistic problems though, and they make
yeah,
sense in the context and help to establish and define their characters better.
you never see that in a show like
Yeah.
this, especially a science fiction show, like an ensemble thing.
Mhm.
You never had like a stable married couple. They were never gonna break up. You were never, if they'd kept him alive, you were never gonna see those characters date other people or something.
Yeah. Hope not. Uh,
I also love that it's a mixed marriage, but there's never any attention drawn to that whatsoever.
yeah.
They're just these are two people that got married. Let's move on. I love that. It's great. We don't even have to draw attention to it.
Yeah. And I mean, I always liked Simon and Kaylee as a couple, but yeah, I agree that I mean, I liked Mal and Inara together. They had some, I mean, their scenes together were interesting, but it's like they can do whatever they want. I'm not really invested in whether or not they get together because they don't need to be defined by that anyways. It's okay if it makes them happy, whatever, but it's there. I hope I'm not annoying the shippers here. Oh yeah, this is a laugh out loud moment for me too. This last line, where the soars triumphantly into space, and then yeah, what was that?
Well, and Whedon is notorious also for bookending like that.
Mm,
That's how the movie opened, or at least how their part of the movie opened.
yeah,
That's really fun. I mean, yeah, it tells you that they're at pretty much the same place at the end as they were at the beginning, at least physically.
yeah. Financially, job wise, the way their life functions, but personally, they've grown.
Yeah.
They've
And then like they've changed things,
yeah,
and you don't know what kind of universe they're about to fly into because the people now at large are going to find out about what happened with the Weavers and what kind of ripple effect is that going to have.
sorry, I can't hear the term ripple effect without thinking about Back to the Future's time travel. He kind of threw me for a second there.
Yeah, but that's still what it is.
I know, but
It's okay. Well, it's a domino effect.
there we go. That works.
It,
Yeah.
anyway, so
Anyway,
what else do we want to mention? I love Mal's speech at the end. About and it's cool that like I can I can hear a speech about love and not feel like it's sappy.
yeah. Actually, I think I like Rivers' line about that speech more than the speech itself. I think I actually said more. Oh, I mean, I loved Mal's speech too, but I love when Rivers says, when Mal questions that she could just read his mind, and she says, "Yes, I do, but I still like to hear you say it."
Yeah, that you're right. That's great.
Mm,
But also, it tells you how it reaffirms how he's not cold.
mm,
I really like seeing a character like that, especially after that kind of an arc. You kind of show his vulnerability a little bit and his love for his ship. I really dig that, and I guess part of the thing too is I kind of buy it. The idea that like if you don't show technology respect, you won't have the kind of relationship you want with it. The idea that like somehow personifying it actually keeps you up in the air longer. Again, given the themes about misuse of technology earlier
I
in the
was
film,
about, yeah.
that's really interesting. Sorry, I just want to take all the good points so you don't get to make them.
Of course. I would expect nothing less of you.
So if they were miraculously to be able to get everybody to come back, would you want to see another one this far removed, 10 years later?
That's a hard question. I mean, because I mean, again, you wouldn't be able to include everybody unless you did some finagling, either with flashbacks or if we take this into a softer science fiction thing and resurrect them somehow. Um, I'm not sure. Again, I'm always wary about franchising to begin with, just because if you have a story to tell and you manage to complete it, I don't want things to be revived just for the sake of giving me, fanboy squeeze for a little while. Like
Yeah.
if you stop it, then don't try to, resuscitate it and have it become a zombie of itself and just, but at the same time, I don't. I mean, because this is one of those things where I don't think it got to go long enough to begin with.
Yeah, I think that this is a fine ending, but I also don't feel like it's quite over.
Yeah,
And like, because it's one of those things where I sort of enjoy this kind of an ambiguous ending where they've created a new world, and it's almost, in some ways you can make the argument that it would be more interesting to not see,
yeah.
to not ever know. But I don't know if that was ever the intention. I don't get the sense that that's how Whedon would have ended the series. And again, listening to him talk about it, it sure sounds like that would have been the end of a season, but I don't know that that's how he would have wanted to go out.
I
I feel like there's more story to tell. I feel like you finally get those two couples sort of kind of together, and fans might like to see how some of that would pan out and stuff. And then again, with Whedon's track record, if we saw them go any farther, none of them would work out.
yeah.
So,
Well, I agree to a point, but actually to turn your words back on you from something we were talking about before we did this commentary,
oh, feel free.
there's a difference between what was intended and what actually happened, what was actually accomplished. So I don't know because again, this ended up, I would assume, at least a large deviation from what he might have intended it. I don't know if you can actually just jump back onto that now that he's kind
Yeah,
of.
but I would make the point that watching the film, I'm not sure that I get a sense of total resolution. Like, I don't mean that the story itself isn't resolved, but I don't get to the end of this movie and think that even Whedon would have said, "I'm never gonna make another
Oh
one
no, no,
after I
no,
get done."
certainly not. But I mean, I would be satisfied if
So
the
there
series
I'm
was to
so
the
there
end.
I'm talking about so there I'm talking about intent based on what we just saw. Even, you know what I mean? Like, not just with Whedon. I don't get to the end of this and think that like it thinks it's over necessarily,
Yeah.
or that it would have to be. But again, I think it's a fine ending.
Hmm. I mean, I think it very well could function, and probably for a large intent is going to function as the end. But I don't know. I could go either way, and it always really just depends on what the end result is, I suppose. If I whether I think it's actually worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, we've got a lot of this stuff just these days keeps going in comic book form.
Hmm.
And so some of us can enjoy it that way, but of course, the vast majority of people aren't going to seek out comic books.
Yep, and as I said, I haven't even read most of them. Although I mean, it's one of those things where it's kind of a different beast though, because in a lot of sense, the comics have more existed to kind of fill in gaps rather than really continue the story in a significantly meaningful way, if that makes any sense. It's been more.
Well, they're working on it
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
and also I'm not just talking about Firefly. I'm also talking about Buffy and Angel, because those shows they've had two more seasons in. Well, Buffy's had two more seasons in comic book form now, and so I mean, like, a lot of Whedon properties just keep going in comic book form. But anyway, well, hey, thanks so much for joining me for this. This was really
This
fun.
was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, Lance, come back again, man.
I will
Let's do
do.
something else in the future. And everybody, as always, thanks so much for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. And I'll be back with you with another one very soon. I'm Captain Logan.
I am Mistare Fusion.
and we'll see you later.
Bye.